All right, welcome to another episode of my Leveraging Your Voice podcast. Today I have another special guest with me, Dr. Shelley Kemp, who happens to be a career coach for women. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, I got it right. Now, mostly I let people introduce themselves so that I can't screw it up. And I started there and I didn't screw it up, but I want you to finish. Where are you from? Just let us know that. Where are you from?
Yeah, I live right outside of Memphis, Tennessee, in a little suburb called Bartlett.
Awesome. And where did you go to school to become a doctor?
I went to Liberty University
Oh,
online, and my doctorate is in education with a specialty in curriculum and instructional design.
awesome. Now I can say to the audience that Dr. Shelley is indeed very well educated because she sent me lots of notes and they're
I
all
did.
well formatted and beautifully laid out. I mean, I can't help but just be impressed. So I get that you were able to become a doctor, and I'm very impressed with that. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, I understand one of the things you want to do is use some of that background and your experience to help women in the workforce to navigate through their careers and big changes and different things like that.
Yes.
I do want to talk about that as we go. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about your work background because it's pretty strong. You've done a lot of different things and worked in a lot of pretty large organizations, which gives you a great background to help women in their careers. So tell us a little bit about how you started out and where you ended up. I think it was with the NBA.
Yes.
Just sort of walk through that and give us a little background on your work history.
Sure. My work started in higher education as I was going through a degree program, getting my bachelor's degree. I just loved learning and the whole atmosphere of higher ed. So I stayed there for a little while. Well, I got my bachelor's degree in organizational management, and then I went ahead and got my master's degree from higher ed. It was time for me to get a corporate job. And because my specialty was human resources, I went into banking first. So, banking was my first HR job. I was an HR generalist and corporate trainer for a couple of years. From there, I missed higher ed and I went right back to higher ed for about 4 or 5 years. Loved it, made a great name for myself, and was able to accomplish a lot. But I knew that if I was going to continue growing in human resources, I really needed to get away from higher ed. So I went back into a pure HR role with a transportation company out of Chicago. They are National Express. I worked here in Memphis for one of their subsidiaries called Durham School Services. I was a recruiter. And so I recruited for them for a good 4.5 years, did some amazing work, worked all around the country with other school depots in Minneapolis, in Charleston, and in Jackson, Mississippi. Loved what I did. They loved what I did, but I had reached the pinnacle in my career as a talent acquisition partner. So I wanted to do more in human resources. And that happens to a lot of ladies that they find that they've gone into a niche and they've perfected it and now they're ready to do more. And that's where I was at about 5 or 6 years ago. No, about 7 or 8 years ago. And I quickly pivoted into the MBA and became the HR manager for the Memphis Grizzlies here in Memphis. That was my last position. I stayed there for roughly 7 years. And now I am on my own and doing some consulting and some coaching. I'm writing a book, and that's kind of where we are now. So now I help ladies kind of navigate their own trail, career trail from their first position into maybe their career or their pinnacle position.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to talk about that more in detail, but I want to get back to some other things that happened in your experience. And one of the things I think of right away is I'd love to hear some stories about working for an NBA team, but then I also think, no, I don't want to hear any stories about an NBA team. So we'll just let that one be.
Yeah.
But I think when you started with the NBA, then you had a personal thing going on that sort of also changed the trajectory of your life and the different things that you talk about. Can you talk to
Yes,
us about that a little bit?
absolutely. So it was 2018. It was the best year probably in my career life. And I had gotten the role of HR manager for the Memphis Grizzlies. It was September. The season was right in front of us, so we were preparing for what that all entailed. And about 3 weeks into my role with the Grizzlies, my son had an accident at home, and I got that dreaded text that you can get where it says come home, and then now accident, and I just kept getting these dots on my phone, and I knew it was really serious for them to tell me to come home. So I went home and found out that my son had actually been in an accident with the lawnmower. He was mowing the lawn in the backyard, and his foot slipped underneath the lawnmower. And he was a basketball player. I've always been a basketball mom. And essentially, what had happened is he had partially amputated his toe box, which was his first three toes and a little bit of the foot.
Mm. That's got to be horrible to get that call. And I have had calls not about something like that, but similar disasters. And
Yes,
it's hard to even drive home and not get in an accident.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I get that feeling, but somehow you did all that. And from that, I know that you wrote a book, and I think its title is related to pivot.
Mhm.
But I think that pivot concept comes from this accident and some of the things that you had to do and deal with around that time. So, from that accident, now just sort of talk to us about how did that create this pivot concept for you?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I said it was the best year, but it was also the worst year because of the accident. And once Anthony, my son, came home, we really needed to develop a routine that would help him thrive again. And I really needed to have something steady that he and I could depend on so that, as I oversaw his healing process and his therapy, as well as this new job that I had, that I could compartmentalize things and I could attend to everything that needed to be attended to in order to A, keep my job, but B, make sure that I nurse my son back to, a healed state, both mentally and physically. And so we fell into this routine month after month. By December, he was essentially healed. It was a miraculous thing. He was healed back on the basketball court by Christmas. And by January, I just had this revelation that, there's something about this pivot routine or this routine that I need to tell people about. And there's a verse in Habakkuk, I think it's Habakkuk 2:3, where the Lord says, write it down, put it on tablets so that everyone can see and the runner can take it to the people. And I kept seeing that Bible verse over and over and over again in the media, in advertising. I would go to an antique show and it would be on an antique. So I thought, okay, I think I'm getting a message here that I need to write this down. So I quickly wrote down everything that I did every single morning as part of my morning routine to get Anthony prepared for school, to get me prepared for work. And it quickly fell into these categories of prayer, investigation, which is just learning something new every day, visualization, offering one thing up every single day, and then training your mind, training your body. And you spell that out and it's pivot. And it was so ironic and coincidental that this was his pivot foot. And in basketball, what you do with your pivot foot is it helps you change direction. And it all just came together. And so now I call this the pivot principle, which is my book that's coming out later in the fall.
Awesome. And that pivot principle is something that you use to in your coaching of women in their careers.
I do.
All right. Now, talk a little bit. You mentioned your faith and some of the Bible verses, and I think we both share a common Christian faith.
Mhm.
Talk to me a little bit about your faith and how it has impacted your career, how it's helped you in your career, and how you think it might influence the coaching you do. I know it's not necessarily Christian coaching, but it's coaching and you have a spirituality behind it. But just
Hmm.
talk a little bit about that, your faith journey and how it's helped.
Definitely. I definitely have a Christian lens whenever I coach someone. So it's not that I'm coaching them the the things that are in the Bible, or I'm, reading scriptures to them, although I will, particularly if they share my faith. But being part of the Christian faith, there are um, certain things or practices that you do in order to demonstrate that you're a follower of Jesus Christ. And so one of them is prayer, a heavy prayer life. And I wasn't saved until I was 28 years old. And so before I was 28, I was in sales. I was very good at sales, but I was one of those salespeople that you did not want to come across, because I would get the sale at any cost. And then as soon as I gave my life over to Jesus Christ, that that identity of me being a salesperson totally went away. And so it has followed me in my career, and it's followed me in how I make my decisions. You know, I know that as an HR person, we have to make decisions based on the good of the organization. But as a person, as a Christian, I also want to make decisions um, that are going to profit and benefit the person as well. So in my work as an HR professional, I look for win-win solutions, winning for the organization as well as winning for the people, because I'm a people person and I put people first. And that's really how I coach as well, is I'm a listener at heart. And so I'm going to listen to what they're telling me. And everyone, all of my coaching clients, they have the power within themselves. They have the answers within themselves to solve their problems. They just need someone to help them extract those answers. And so that's what I do through my coaching. As a certified mindfulness coach, I use a lot of mindfulness techniques to help them kind of get rid of the mind chatter that's in their brain that can keep them from thinking clearly. And that helps also in our prayer lives too, because some people say that they have a difficulty praying because they have so much chatter going on in their head that they can't hear themselves pray. And so mindfulness and my practice of mindfulness helps them kind of get rid of all that chatter so they can talk and they can release their fears, their anxieties, and they can really um, come to some solutions that are spirit led.
Well, let's talk about the mindfulness coaching that you do a little bit. You said you're certified. Where did you get certified, and what sort of application is that mindfulness certification in the work that you do?
Yes, I was certified through a company called Mindful Momentum, and it's out of Kansas City, Kansas. And it was a 9 month 9 month program where I went 6 months doing courses with the founder and doing exercises, weekly exercises. And then I had to coach a client for 3 months. And so my certification was gained back in 2022. And I bring that into my human resource practice as well as my coaching practice, because I find that really between HR and coaching, we're really managing people's emotions, whether it's I didn't get the job offer, I didn't get the promotion, or I'm in a relationship that feels toxic. It's all very emotional, and women are feeling beings. And so my mindfulness helps them slow down, forget about, what happened yesterday, and not to think about what's going to happen tomorrow, but to think about where we are right now. And let's talk about what we can fix in the now. And it really helps people, um, for lack of a better word, it helps them deal with what the reality of the situation is instead of what they think the situation is, because our thoughts can play games on us. They can
Hmm.
trick us. And
Hmm.
so I really teach women to reset their rhythm, build their emotional resilience, and kind of reconnect with themselves through mindfulness exercises.
Yeah, I can see how that would have a direct impact on the HR work you were even doing with the Memphis Grizzlies.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
got that
Would have
right.
loved to have
Memphis
worked.
Grizzlies, right?
Yes, that's right.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
All right. In my
Um,
last podcast, it was UCLA Bruins, and I got that one right too. So that's 2 for 2 over the last
two for
two.
two. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm doing great here. All right. So, see, sometimes you got to compliment yourself because no one else is gonna. So, what the heck? Pat yourself on the back sometimes.
Hey, that is a human resource tactic for promotions. You have to talk the good stuff about yourself, what you're doing
Absolutely.
good. That's
All
right.
right. So, we have women listening now, and what you've done is just real briefly, when did you finish working with the Memphis Grizzlies? How long ago
Hmm.
was that?
Just April. It's only been about 6 weeks.
Okay. And as that was coming toward a close, you were looking towards your future because I know you were already working on your book and you were moving toward this coaching concept. And
Yes.
for women who are listening now,
Hmm.
what kind of person are they? What's your ideal client look like? If they're thinking, hey, is Dr. Shelley for me?
Hmm.
What are you going to say to them? Who are these people and what are they struggling with now and why would they turn to you?
Yeah. One of the things that I did so very well and loved doing in human resources is working with interns. And that helped me identify my perfect client. So I would describe my perfect client as an early career professional. So that means 22-ish, 22 to about 55. And 55 can be an early career professional, particularly if they started over again or if they're wanting to start over again. So my ideal client is in the midst of change, whether it is getting their first job, getting an internship, getting a promotion. Maybe they're working and they're going through a divorce and it's affecting their work, but they're in the midst of change. And I help those women with that change, navigate that change so that they're not overwhelmed and so they can develop the personal resources and personal tactics to handle all of the things that come with change and chaos in our work life, in our personal life, and in society. I know that's kind of broad, but
Well,
that's who
it's
I work with.
good. You're talking to women who are early professionals, and as you said, 22 to 55, say, and
Mhm.
I can see a 50-year-old woman who wants to do something new or different, or maybe is
Absolutely.
coming back into the workforce, has been back in the workforce for a period of time and wants to make some changes. So I can
Yes,
see all of that. And the struggle is real. Change is everywhere, and needing to be able to deal with it is a hard thing.
that's right.
So I'm not a woman, but there's a listener here sitting there thinking, okay, I'm a female. I'm
Hmm.
going through change in my career. I want to reach out to Dr. Shelley. What
Hmm.
would they expect? I mean, what kind of, are you going to sit down and say, oh, here's a pivot principle. Come back and see me in 3 months? Talk to me a little bit about what it looks like if they decide they want to work with you.
Sure. So first of all, we're going to listen. They're going to share their story. They're going to tell me, what they want from me, what they would like to get from me, and I'm going to listen. And then we're going to come up with a strategy that could be a 30-day plan, it could be a 60-day plan, it could be a 90-day plan to get them to certain points within those goals that we have established for ourselves. And then I meet with them on a regular basis, whatever is regular for them. So it could be weekly or biweekly. If they're in the Memphis area, I'm happy to do it in person. But if not, I do most of my coaching online. I have a 9-week virtual mindfulness coaching session, and that's group coaching. And that's really nice because then you get to be part of a community where you learn from each other. And then I have something called the Mustard Seed membership, where they're actually tuned into me and I actually coach them on a monthly basis through their goals and the things that they're going through. With my HR background, it's very practical because then I can help them walk through maybe a salary negotiation or a promotion ask. But then on my mindfulness practice, I can also help them navigate any type of overwhelm or any type of need for emotional regulations. And so I just bring those together and we work out a plan together that will be mutually beneficial. 30, 60, 90 days. Those are usually the plans. I've had people work with me longer, but usually after about 90 days to 120 days, they don't need me, but maybe for a checkup.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional regulation.
Yes,
That's a funny word, a funny
isn't
two
it?
words. Emotional regulation. So what you're saying is you don't want my emotions running all over the place and then driving me into all these bad behaviors.
Emotions are good, but not everybody on the outside can handle our emotions. So we've got
Yeah.
to figure out how we can leverage our emotions for our benefit.
Leverage them for our good and keep the bad part of them sort of set aside so that they don't drive us
Absolutely.
batty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, emotions get out of whack because our brains are simply trying to protect us
Mm-hmm.
from whatever that is. You know, thousands of years ago, it would have been a saber-toothed tiger, right? But now they're trying to protect us from, oh, you might get fired if you do this, or he might break up with you if you do this, or he might take the children away if you do this. Our brains are always trying to protect us. And so what I help with is navigating those thoughts into, is this reality? Or is this what your brain is telling you only to protect you, which usually means it's not reality?
Yeah, those are some weighty matters that you just brought up there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so those are some of the things that I'm sure all of these different women are dealing with and can use your help with. So when you think about, as we draw towards the end of this episode, some final thoughts or final words of wisdom that you might want to share. Before we get there, I want to ask, did we miss anything that you wanted to share that maybe I haven't asked you about? Is there anything that you wanted to cover that I haven't touched on?
The only thing you and I need to cover is, let's make sure they know that the pivot principle is going to be out later this year. And it has the 5 tools that I use for a daily routine. It's also going to have excerpts from my own personal journal. It's going to have all of his updates from the doctor in each chapter. So you can actually see how little miracles happen over time and a prognosis of he's never going to run again, he's going to limp, gets to he's completely healed. And it's going to be a great book. It's going to be a great resource. And I hope that so many people will enjoy it and tell me how they love it and tell me their own experiences and how they apply the pivot. But that would be the only thing I would want to share extra.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's an exciting book. I can't wait till it comes out later in the fall.
Yes.
So that's excellent. I love that. Maybe I'll even have you back and we can then show the book and say, hey, it's out now.
That would
So,
be great.
so we can do that too. All right. Final thoughts then. And speak to your ideal client. What's your final thoughts to the ladies who are watching and maybe in career change and maybe in need of some support from
Mm.
someone like yourself?
I would say that, you know, change is inevitable and it's going to happen. It's going to happen when you least expect it. I did not expect to leave the MBA. I thought I was going to be there until I retired, but it happened. And it's nice when you have something you can fall back on. If you are a Christian, of course, you have your Christian community and the Bible, but maybe you're newer in your faith walk, or maybe you don't have a faith walk. That is okay. I have the foundation for you. It's the pivot principle. I'd love to share it with you. And we can walk through change together. And so that's what I'm here to do, to help women maximize their own best self. And I would love to do that. And so, Paul, I thank you for having me on this show. It's been great.
Awesome. Dr. Shelley, I help women maximize their own self.
That's right.
That's a great line. All right. Well, with that, we will bring this episode to a close, folks. I want to thank you for joining us as always. I always ask this, if you are watching this, it's free to go hit the little like button. So if you wouldn't mind, go hit the little like button. Appreciate that. I don't think I mentioned who I am at the beginning. See, sometimes I don't do that quite right. So I'm Coach Paul with PR Vocal Coaching, and this is my podcast, Leveraging Your Voice. I love bringing guests on like Dr. Shelley so that they can leverage their voice. And then Dr. Shelley, take little clips from this session today and share them everywhere. I think that would be great for everyone to get a chance to know what you're doing, because I think there's just a lot of people that could use your help. And so just be free to do that. And folks, thank you as always for joining us. There's a lot of different episodes there at my site on YouTube, Leveraging Your Voice. You just type that in, you'll find it. And if you are interested in what I do, you can go to my website, prvocalcoaching.com, where I help people turn their voice into their greatest asset. And in this world of technology and AI and all this stuff, human communication remains the most important thing. So there's no reason that you should go through life untrained in how to use your voice to communicate with other people. So if that's of interest, you can find out all of the information there at prvocalcoaching.com and just click the button on there to reach out to me if you'd like. All right. Thank you for joining us. As always, appreciate it. Bye for now.